Rewind back to the 2021-2022 season and think back to the Dallas Mavericks roster at that time. And while that team did make it to the Western Conference Finals that season, the supporting cast of Luka Doncic looked completely different. From a pure talent perspective, the Mavericks were severely lacking and were strapped on trade assets following the damage left behind from Donnie Nelson and the Porzingis trade. In the span of 2 years, Luka went from playing with this roster to this roster, and is now on a deep playoff run in the finals with a team consisting of Kyrie Irving and the perfect players to surround Luka with. How did this happen? Well, let me tell you, it all starts with Nico Harrison. On June 28th, 2021, Nico Harrison was officially named the GM for the Dallas Mavericks. While this move did raise some question marks, the Mavericks were banking on Nico's previous experience as a Nike executive and his personal relationships with NBA players to help build the proper team around their budding superstar. His first season as the GM was quiet for the most part, using what little he had to work with. But everything began when the Mavericks traded Kristaps Porzingis to the Wizards for Davis Bertans and Spencer Dinwiddie. This helped catapult the Mavericks on a deep run to the Western Conference Finals later that season, as the Mavs went on an 18-9 run to close the season. And while their championship aspirations did end early with a loss to the eventual NBA champions, the Golden State Warriors, Nico was only getting started. The very following season saw Nico get aggressive, snagging Jaden Hardy from the Kings, signing JaVale McGee, and trading for Christian Wood. But the big signing for this season came on February 6, 2023, when the Mavericks sent shockwaves through the NBA by trading Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith, a couple second-rounders, and only one first-rounder for superstar Kyrie Irving. Now, Kyrie was coming off a couple questionable seasons with the Celtics and the Nets, and the trade was met with slander all throughout the media. And at first, it seemed like everyone was right. Dallas crashed and burned the remainder of the season, compiling a losing record with Kyrie and Luka together and completely falling out of the playoff race. But the whole trajectory of the team changed following the draft night, heading into the 2023 and 24 NBA season. Here's a quick summary of everything Nico pulled off that night and the remainder of the offseason. He initially selected Cason Wallace with the 10th overall pick, then traded that pick with Davis Bertans' horrible contract to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Derek Lively II from Duke. Then they traded cash considerations to the Kings for Rashawn Holmes and the 24th overall pick, Omax Prosper from Marquette. And then, just a couple days later, they acquired Grant Williams in a 3-team trade from the Boston Celtics. But my boy was not done cooking yet. Nico then signed Dante Exum from overseas, and then got possibly one of the biggest steals of the offseason by signing Derrick Jones Jr. to a vet minimum. Seth Curry was also signed to a multi-year contract, and while he didn't have an important role on the team now, he would be involved in one of the biggest trades of the league later in the season. Going into the 2024 trade deadline, Dallas had been dealing with injuries, inconsistent play, and was floating towards the bottom of the Western Conference standings. What came next would completely transform the Mavericks roster. Nico realized that Grant Williams was not working anywhere near as well as they hoped it would, so they packaged him with Seth Curry and one first-rounder to get PJ Washington from the Charlotte Hornets. Dallas then traded Rashawn Holmes and their last first-rounder to the Washington Wizards to get Daniel Gafford. These two were the final pieces needed to round out one of the most complete rosters we have seen around Luka Doncic, and that should terrify the league. Keep in mind, this and the Kyrie trade both received D- ratings or lower depending where you looked at the time of them happening. Do y'all remember how many picks the Wolves gave up to get Rudy Gobert? 4. Yes, 4 first-rounders. And while yes, Kyrie was on an expiring contract at the time of the Mavs trade, giving up one first-rounder for one of the greatest offensive talents we have ever seen is absolutely a steal compared to the trade prices of NBA players nowadays. And rewinding back to the importance of Gafford in Washington, remember, most of the Mavs teams we have seen in the Luka Doncic era have revolved around high-octane offenses with terrible defenses. After the trade deadline this year, the Mavericks had the best defense the remainder of the regular season, and it has only gotten better as the group has continued to build chemistry and get battle-tested throughout the playoffs. And the Dallas Mavericks clearly see how good of an eye Nico Harrison has for roster construction, as the team literally just inked him to a multi-year extension just this morning. Luka and Kyrie rightfully deserve so much credit for the Mavs' impressive run through the Western Conference gauntlet, But with a team on the doorstep of an NBA championship, with a young, talented roster surrounding their generational talent, the man behind the scenes of this revamped team deserves just as much credit.